Thank you for reminding me. And I hope everybody's okay with us recording. We love to share this with other people that are not able to make it. So welcome everybody.
Ruth, just real quickly, at the same time, you may want to have so long as you're recording, it may be useful also to have the transcript.
Oh, that's right.
Everyone can download if they wish, but it at least gives some kind of notes.
Right. And it's just enable, wait, did I say disable or enable? I just did enable and now it's highlighted as disable. You can look at it too, Dr. Hamilton. I think I clicked on it, so hopefully it's working. Yes, it's working, yay. All right, welcome everybody to the forum. Our goal is to create a virtual forum that brings together educators from across the African continent. We've invested partners from around the globe to both reflect and act around shareable solutions that empower educators into the future post-COVID. We try to share story, reflect together, and resource each other. And today we have 3 people presenting, and that's our way of trying to resource each other and create some collaborations among ourselves. Next slide, please. So quick agenda for today. We've already kind of touched on introductions. We've shared the purpose. So we have 3 groups presenting, and then we'll try to have 2 breakout rooms, one after the speakers, one after the keynote speaker, and then some reflections. You come back from your breakout rooms and share some reflections. And then we'll just talk about some reminders and news if there is any. Next slide. So our guiding, you know how we have guiding pedagogy or guiding theory or guiding framework. So today our guiding African proverb is, a wise man never knows all, only fools know everything. So we're here to learn from everybody and nobody knows it all. So I'm excited to learn from all of you. So today and for the rest of the year, we're going to try to focus on shareable solutions through cross-cultural collaborations. And today, again, like I mentioned, we have 3 people collaborating across countries. Some people in the same country, but it's still maybe different villages. So we still call that cross-cultural collaboration. Next slide, Lisa. So we don't have all 7 groups today, but that we previously planned. We have these 4 major groups, and we have, I know all of you mentioned that you want it to be in particular groups. We've tried to streamline it so that everybody is a participant in one of these 4 groups. Next slide. Listen, there we go. Wonderful. So right now, if the digital access group, are you guys ready to present? So we have Otien Joy from Uganda, we have Michael from Kenya, and then we have Patrick from Kenya. They do wonderful work, and it will be an honor to hear them talk about how they are tackling digital access. Are you here, and are you able to present?
Hi.
Hi, Joy. There you are.
How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So is your team here?
Yeah, Michael is here. Patrick is also here. Probably they could just unmute and join in.
Right. And then would one of you like to share your slides and then go ahead and present?
Michael, Patrick, are you there?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yes, we are here.
Hi, everyone.
If you would like for me to share your slide, that's also okay. Whichever is easier for you. You could share it yourself, or I could share it. Which one is easier for you?
I'm actually joining from my phone, so okay, I'll be okay. With anybody else.
All right, let's see. Let me see. I think I do have your. We do not want to stop recording.
I can share.
Okay, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Okay. So let me go. Is that Patrick?
No, that's Mike.
That's Mike speaking.
Hello, Mike. Let me give you co-host power. Make sure you share. If I can find you for a second there.
Yeah.
If any of you ladies can find Michael before me. Let's see. Another way I could do it is put it in speaker.
Yeah. Or you can just share it from your end. I think it's the same, so nothing much changed.
Much easier when you can manage your own. Let's see. Looks like we might go to that sooner. Hold on. Digital access. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. I have
And
so
just
much.
maximize presenter mode,
So you
maybe.
can put it in presentation mode.
I will in a second. I just have too many
Okay.
tabs. I just have too many tabs going on here. All right. This is your group. Will you introduce yourselves? Take it over, please. It's all
So
you.
should we start?
Yes, it's all you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone.
You froze, Joy. I think you froze. Michael, you want to jump in?
Can you see me?
Now we can hear you and we can see you. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy. I'm so pumped, to be joining this forum today. My name is Joy Atieno. I come from all the way from Uganda, though I'm Kenyan. I'm a Kenyan citizen, but anyway, in Africa, we are Pan-Africans, right? You can work anywhere. I call myself a digital activist because I'm passionate about how Africa can leverage the power of internet and technology to empower its young people to overcome acute problems around unemployment. Youth unemployment is very high, poverty, and food insecurity. I am a co-founder of an organization called Teens Crown. And at Teens Crown, what we are doing, we are helping nurture creative talents among young people across Uganda, because we believe the world is aesthetically beautiful to live in and to exist because of the work of creatives, but not enough concerted effort is being done to ensure that the creative sector is growing and continues to expand. So I'll give a chance to Michael and Patrick to also introduce themselves.
Thank you,
Hello,
Joy. Thank you,
everyone.
Joy.
Hi,
Hi,
it is
everyone.
Michael here.
Go, Michael. Michael, you can continue. Michael, Patrick, are you there?
Hi, everyone. As we wait for Mike to come back, I could go ahead and introduce myself. So yeah, it's really nice to be here. My name is Patrick Njoroge from Edu South Africa, and I'm also working in the STEAM education space as an informal educator, and been working with Edu South Africa for the last few years. And one of the things I'm excited about this meeting is getting to share more with people across Africa and beyond on some of the practices, especially on digital technologies, which is something that we shall be able to present in this particular meeting. And we'll throw it back to my colleague, Michael, if at all he's able to get back on the call. Is Mike there?
It doesn't seem like it. Could you proceed without mic for now?
Yes, we can be able to proceed without mic as we wait
Yeah,
for
I
him.
think we can proceed.
Yes.
Patrick, you can be looking for Mike as I proceed with the presentation.
Yes, Joy will be starting us off, and
Okay, thank you so much. So group one, we are going to tackle digital access, how to ensure people who come from marginalized places like sub-Saharan Africa, the place where I come from, Uganda, it's still a very small economy, very young democracy still. So how do we ensure from such places there is equal digital access, online learning can happen. So I'll start off with introduction bit of our presentation. And number one, for us to see more digital access, there is need for advocacy and increased civic participation. Essentially, most of issues around infrastructural challenges like inadequate access to internet connectivity by most communities in Africa, especially, these are affected by legislation. And we see there is a kind of apathy among most young people where they don't trust the government and they don't trust politicians. And that, for example, has been... Sorry, my young one just jumped in. I quickly had to whisper, like, go away, mommy's in a meeting. Sorry. So as I was saying, most of this is affected by legislation, but you are seeing an apathy among most young people in Africa between the ages of 18 to 35 towards politics and towards legislation, where they hate their government, they hate their politicians. But then it's inevitable that if at all we want to ensure equal digital access, there is need for more young people to get into positions, become MPs, become ministers, become head of parastatals and sit in boards so that they can be able to influence changes. We cannot keep on, coming to such forums and complain that, oh, we have inadequate infrastructure, in terms of telecommunication infrastructure, in terms of internet connectivity, in terms of even gadgets and cost of data. So it's important that young people, we start getting into civic spaces, and so that we can increase our advocacy. Because, Aristotle said it very well, that when you have love and empathy for your community, but you don't have the power to effect change, it is just empty semantics, right? But then on the other hand, we have our leaders who have the power, but they lack the empathy, which is corruption. So it's important that as young people, as much as we are seeing the problems and we have a passion to change, but then we need the power also. So it's important that you're getting into into the civic space. Number two is localization and contextualization. And what I mean by this is, when there is a problem, for example, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the easiest thing that people had to do was this knee-jerk reaction that, okay, schools are closed, what can we do? Let's take it online. But then what is the local context? How does the problem look like? If you want to go online, but then kids cannot even access a gadget as simple as a feature phone, then it is foolhardy. If you're trying to go online or you're trying to increase digital access, but then people cannot even... It's well known that in Africa, most families live under $1. So it's immoral, to effect online learning and then put parents or caregivers in a point where they have to decide between either buying food or buying data for their children to access classes online. So it's important that we start with the local context. And this one comes in terms of even most interventions. I've seen, yeah, coding is great, programming is great, digital marketing is great, but what is the problem? What is the gap? We need more engineers so that we can increase the connectivity. Probably we need to work on manufacturing and in the industries so that we can get more gadgets into people's hands and make them affordable. The last point is, let us be part of the solution, not the problem. For example, for me, I said, I want to be part of the solution, and that's when I came up with my social enterprise, Teens Crown, contribute towards making the situation better. Because if we keep on, calling the meetings like, what is the problem? What is the problem? But the question is, when are we going to have forums where we come up with the solutions? But also the solution without action is dead. So how do we come up with actionable solutions? Like we come out of here and we say, okay, we are going to petition the Kenyan government or the Ugandan government to lower the cost of data. And then we follow through with that. Or we are going to create a forum where, we are going to pool funds so that we ensure those who are doing impact in their communities, it becomes bigger and bigger and better. So Michael, do you want to take over?
Thank you so much, Joy, for that wonderful. So Patrick, I think we'll take over on the next slide. Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Joy, for the presentation. And I will pick it up from the last bit you talked about becoming part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I will be speaking about some of the solutions we have implemented in the past, especially regarding the digital divide and also finding ways through which technology, even in cases where we do not have access to internet or local solutions, can be also be implemented even in rural or informal settings. And could you go to the previous slide, please?
It's jumping. It doesn't want to stick to your slide for some reason.
Okay, I can share it from my end.
Okay, yes, it's jumping. It's not, it doesn't want to do that. So go ahead, share.
But but as I wait for the presentation, so I will be talking about technology solutions that do not require access to internet that we have been able to use in the recent past, and also using them in rural contexts. And one of the technologies I'll be speaking about is a technology called Colibri, which works in offline contexts like a server, and it's able to broadcast content within a given radius. And we have been able to use it in rural Kenya. For example, we used it in the schools in Kisumu, which is a county in Kenya. We've also used it in schools in Embu County, and also schools in Trans Nzoia County. And like you can see, there's a picture that is showcasing a group of students working on computers. And this is a rural school in Kisumu County, where students were accessing learning materials from the Colibri. And I will probably ask Mike, my colleague, to share a link to Colibri, where you can be able to learn more about the technology we have been using in Kenya to reach students who are able to access materials relating to either mathematics, biology, and also have an access to things like quizzes, and also things relating to storybooks from the technology that is called Colibri, which does not require internet connectivity, but students also have the ability to be able to do a variety of quizzes from the different subjects, as well as access simulations in subjects like chemistry or physics, as they also go through other content in other subjects. And yes, so through that, we have been able to work with the technology, and from experiences from some of the teachers we have worked with, for example, this has enabled them. For example, if I pinpoint an example in physics and chemistry, where a teacher in a rural school in Embu County has been able to use the technology to simulate physics and chemistry practicals, and this has increased the understanding of the subject, because through the simulations, which are video-like, the students are able to even conduct the experiments in that offline context while working with the technology, even in those rural settings without internet. And then apart from that, when you think about how else can we also be able to engage students through low-cost technology that also increases the joy of learning inside and outside the classroom. And I will still ask my colleague to share a link on the chat of a tool that we have used in, particularly in science engagement, a tool called Foldscope, which is a handheld microscope that teachers can be able to use in their classroom. And this tool, if you think about the cost of, say, microscopes in the normal market rates, you will find that a microscope is probably $300 or so. And so these are materials which are not accessible to teachers in the classrooms due to the limited number of funds. And then, but this particular tool is a tool that is low cost because it costs $1, and also it has the ability to be able to bring learning even outside the classroom. For example, if you look at the first picture that we have, somebody holding a phone. It's the tool that is called Foldscope that is in use. And it's through this tool that that learners have been able to learn more about science in the primary school context, or biology in the high school context, to take pictures of organisms that they are able to observe. And these are some of the pictures. Like you can see, we have pictures of pollen grains, blades of grass, drops of water, and the wing of a fly. And if you think about the entire STEAM concept, these are things that can also be integrated not only in the science bit, but through the images, for example, they see, it could also be integrated in mathematics, for example, trying to calculate the number of pollen grains in a flower, or even in art, in terms of replicating the images they're seeing in form of sketches. And then apart from that, even though some of these technologies are not low cost, play-based activities, play-based learning activities that we've also done before have included introducing play inside and outside the classroom, where learners are able to work with robots and in particular Lego robots, and through these, learners are able to experience more joy inside the classroom when they are learning different concepts in either technology, engineering, the arts, or the mathematics. And this is something that we have seen in different contexts while working with children here in Kenya. And some of these tools may require investments in terms of gadgets, but when you think about it in terms of offline and online, they are tools that can reach schools. For example, if I talk about Kenya, we have seen the government invest heavily in technology by distributing gadgets and in particular tablets to schools. And they've been loaded with resources where learners can be able to access different materials. And then if you combine that, whatever the government has been able to do with technologies such as Colibri, then students can be able to access more resources apart from what we have been provided with by the government. And so students will be able to have more videos or quizzes, or even simulations. And then with the low-cost gadgets like Foldscopes, learners can also be able to have that fun way of learning different subjects. And we'll take it to Mike, who will talk about some of the non-tech based activities where learners can be able to engage even in digital divide contexts.
Thank you so much, Joy and Patrick. So to everyone here, I think it was clear that I had tech challenges when people are introducing themselves, but that is probably why I'm handling this last bit. Joy talked about governance and digital divide and how are youths getting involved into this. Patrick just talked about some of the tech-based that at EduTab Africa we are trying to implement to support learning in that direction. What about those people who cannot have access to tech, but still are interested in learning all this? So one of the things that we are implementing or supporting learning with, especially those people who with little or no access to digital devices, there are these specific activities, there are these specific hands-on activities that are internet-free resources that we are supporting primary schools in Western region of Kenya in bringing science to life. We just had Patrick mentioning about ability to introduce the concept of microscopy to the very youngest age. A majority of us probably interacted very first time with their microscope, or at least when they are in secondary schools. Does it mean it can't be introduced in primary school? No. How about the concept of science, the concept of conservation, the concept of nature? Are there specific activities that doesn't necessarily require internet, or rather computers or mobile phones or tablets, to be implemented just the same way others are implemented? Take a look at this first picture here. This is a grade 2 school in Western region trying to bring science back into classroom, bring nature into classroom. The kind of learning that we've seen, we've witnessed, when you engage children, basically reminds me that if we teach them, probably they forget. How about if we engage them? Probably they discover. When you look at water, this second drawing here, I have children here, again, grade 2 children, understanding or introducing them to the concept of water conservation. How do they understand, or how do they learn about conservation of water if they don't even understand what a basic component of water is? Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. My internet dropped, so I thought I lost everyone. So when you look at this, we are engaging the student to even understand the fundamentals of where is this water coming from? Can they relate it? Can they translate it? Can they communicate it? Think about that for a moment. Looking at the image down here, probably we've been shown real robots. Sometimes these young kids, young children, can be their own robots, can create their own robots. The beauty of learning is when fun is involved. So with or without computers, can we learn the concept of robotics? A question for another time. How about games and having fun in learning? Barely in our setup, for example, in Kenya, these cards here are not allowed in our, for example, secondary school setup. But you will realize that a majority of some concept, big mathematical concept, actually apply the use of cards. So how do we use this concept? How do you use such kind of activities? It doesn't have to be playing cards. It can be even card created by kids themselves. How can we promote learning through play? And the question I'm going to leave you with, does play always mean learning? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, Joy, and Patrick. This was amazing. And I'm really grateful for all the work that you are doing out there in Kenya. And as you know, I'll be there. So I'm excited to see you at work. We will, because of time, we will launch right into the next group. And Lisa, will you bring it up? And make sure that we just go through all the group presentations, and then we'll take questions. There is a link that I've added in the chat box to make it easier, so you don't forget. You could just put in your questions there for now while the next group presents. I think the next group, mental health. Cindy and Miracle, are you here?
Yes.
All right, are you ready to jump in?
Yes.
Wonderful. I think you have sharing power, so go ahead. Thank you, Lisa.
I think Miracle is sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Just let me know if once you see my screen.
Me too. So you introduce yourselves and then jump right in. Thank you.
Sorry.
Alrighty. So today we will discuss mental health, reintegrating children after trauma and loss of learning from COVID, learners and educators with disabilities. I am Sydney Nixon, PhD candidate at Pepperdine University in Los Angeles, California. And my partner is Miracle Gavor, doctoral researcher at UCL Institute in London, England. Before we discuss the process of reintegrating children after trauma and loss of learning from COVID, learners and educators with disabilities, we have to address how mental health is viewed on the continent of Africa. Mental health in Africa has been tagged as madness and has been the dominant word and label to describe mental health in Africa, which contributes to the treatment of those struggling with mental illness. According to Yendork in Ghana, mental illness is largely viewed as a spiritual illness, thus pointing to the significance of spirituality in the conceptualization of mental illness. The labeling of mental health in Africa has prevented those with mental health issues from receiving proper treatment, and additionally, much like in the United States, access to quality health care is based often on one's economic class.
The impact of the problem on the citizens of Africa, and for that matter, the world over, is that they are faced with stigmatization, social rejection, as well as isolation. And in the context of Africa, it's very pathetic in the sense that the issue of stigmatization and then isolation as well as social rejection is not only limited to the individual suffering from mental health, it cascades to the family and family relations as well, to the context of issues around marriage, where the stigmatization could go as far as families being investigated if they have issues or instances of mental health. And that could be a basis for the annulment of marriage in certain communities as well. And then when you take it to a bit higher, it goes that the impact is not only limited to the individual or the family, but also to a whole community, where people could be tagged as or that family or that community have a disease of mental health issues, or what they typically call in the African context madness, have issues of madness. And then the whole community is tagged as a community where you can't have any good coming from that community. Support for them is also not forthcoming because of the stigmatization that they've been tagged with. The other side of there's a common adage that goes on within the African continent, particularly for Ghana, that says that the cured madman still has a level of madness with which they scare children. What that means is that even though people could be seen as having recovered from mental health issues, they are still seen as a threat to the children from the communities and then to the larger community, because it is seen that they cannot be fully cured or fully recovered from the issues of mental health in the context of Africa and in Ghana.
So here we talk about the solutions and results. The data highlights the need to change the perception of mental health care, evaluate the accessibility and adoption, and increase government spending to close the gaps. There is still so much to learn about identifying social cultural factors contributing to stigma to improve the transferability of anti-stigma approaches from high to low and middle income countries. Due to the high demand for mental health services, there is an urgent need to increase school and medical budgets. Government officials should continue to analyze the long-term impacts of COVID-19 and ways to change the stigma around mental health. Consequently, school and government officials should partner together to ensure that each student has access to free mental health care and provide mental health education to help the stigma associated with the psychological disorders. For example, in the Ghanaian population, the aim would be to raise awareness of mental illness, specifically the types, symptoms, causes, and available treatment options. In order to access many people at a time, instead of using a previously proposed 9-hour over 3-session course approach and training sessions, we would consider adopting 1-session talk shows and presentations at public gatherings such as churches, mosques, schools, marketplaces, and through media. During the session, the educator could deliver the program in a summarized manner in order to retain attention and incite interest. And give the participants the opportunity to share their thoughts and ask questions. Using this approach would be cost effective as groups of participants could easily be accessed at a time. Education should target the media, church leaders and congregants, students, and laypersons. Policymakers could consider integrating psychoeducation on mental illness into the Ghanaian educational curriculum from the basic schools to senior high schools in order that children and young adults will be well informed of mental illness. We also agree with other researchers who have called for collaboration between the church and mental health professionals given that the church plays a vital role in the management of mental illness. We have seen a widespread act to increase aid surrounding mental health and healthcare professionals, as well as the school budget. The pandemic has highlighted several disparities in educational resources, such as a lack of technology and healthcare services. World leaders are actively gathering data to find solutions through UNESCO's 17 Sustainable Goal Plans. Unfortunately, there are several limitations as there is a lack of data surrounding adolescent mental health. Many schools and students and families were not prepared for the isolation resulting in increased psychological distress in adolescents. Therefore, researchers should continue to monitor the longitudinal impact of COVID-19 on mental health in adolescents.
Some of the issues which we'd like to highlight has to do with access to healthcare for mental health patients in Ghana, and then of course budgetary allocations for support for mental health issues generally across the health delivery system. Key amongst them is that in as much as people are seeking routes to resolve issues regarding mental health, the accessibility of facility is very limited. Out of every 100 people, there are about 75 of them that cannot access any healthcare due to the lack of facilities as well as trained professionals, and then people who are willing. For example, in Ghana, in as much as we have health training institutes for mental health, there's only one known qualified psychiatric that handles all issues of mental health in Ghana as well. Then the other issue is the budgetary allocation to mental health issues are spent in the areas of emolument, staff salaries, other than facilities to cater to individuals suffering from mental health issues. So these are other considerations we would like you to be aware of, that accessibility is an issue. Budget allocations that are there are very minimal and are spent on staff emolument rather than for care of patients with mental health issues. Cindy, you're muted.
Sorry. what can we do to cross collaborate to create more solutions in this area? We have a 5-step process that we've highlighted for you guys. Promote multi-stakeholder collaboration to advance local, national, and global efforts in favor of good mental health. Create policies that ethically frame and guide the use of new technologies and data for early diagnosis and prevention of mental ill health. 3, improve access to mental health care and encourage the development of novel drugs and therapies for the treatment of mental health conditions. Then steps 4 through 5, improve care pathways and insurance schemes for treating specific mental health disorders by defining and adopting standards of care. And lastly, but not least, increase the number of mental health specialists and train non-specialists to deliver mental health care at the community level.
And finally, we'd like to share some further reading materials that when we share the slide, you could consult for further information around mental health on the continent of Africa and also mental health in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was very informative. I think this is the first time I've sat in a session that talks about mental health and disabilities. So I understand how important this is for our people in Africa and globally. If all of us participants have any questions, put it in the question link that I send. That will help us be able to keep track and ask questions once the 3 presentations are done. So Lisa, will you pop up the next? So thank you both again. So our next group is the professional development group, and we have Mark, Wisdom, and Bisala. So Mark, Wisdom, and Bisala, are you ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Wonderful. So we will pass it over to you. Briefly introduce yourselves and then dive in.
Okay, so thank you guys. If you can hear me, my name is Mark Tete from Accra, Ghana, and I work in a team of 3. So I will allow my colleagues at this point to also introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all from my end here. My name is Bisala Sala from Nigeria. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wisdom's Kadnab Sunday. I'm a Teach for Nigeria fellow here in Abeokuta, Ogun State, Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Okay. So good afternoon from the part of the world where we happen to find ourselves. We are group 3, and we will be presenting on cross-cultural collaboration, particularly looking at how we can leverage best practices to solve issues having to deal with professional development and resources within our educational system. So just as you have noticed, this presentation is by Salah, Xavier, and then Mark, myself. Okay, so areas of focus, we're going to briefly focus on inadequacy of resources, teaching and learning resources within school systems. And then we would also take a look at professional development, teacher attitudes, and the need for diversity in training. To start with, I want to say that this presentation has taken a multi-sectoral approach because Salah is from the Ministry of Education. Xavier is from a public system of education, that's the public school system, and I also happen to be from the international school system. And so we just have had to undertake this project from different perspectives, and it's important to stress that we try to do extensive reading and research on our topic area and also combine our experience from being within the educational industry and being able to come up with the solutions that we found in this presentation. A few quotes that we've got here by Julius Nyerere. president, former president of Tanzania. We've got Kofi Annan, our UN Secretary General, and then Nelson Mandela from South Africa to get us that thinking. Okay, so we get to start now. The first challenge we had to research and to look at was inadequate of teaching and learning resources within our educational system. So we tried to sit down and to look at the different educational systems within the continent and to research on how educational system, how inadequate resources is impacting teaching and learning in our schools. Eventually, we came across this journal by the African Economist, which states that education has seen a dramatic improvement within the past 50 years, half century. But interestingly to note is that as we speak now, at least 1 out of 3 children on the continent are not able to complete primary education, which is seen by Kofi Annan as a basic human right. So it means that to a large extent, the kind of educational system we are operating as a continent is depriving about 1/3 of our population in terms of the children population from access to quality education and from access to a basic human right. Now we sat down to brainstorm what could be contributing to this unequal access to quality education to the extent that we have 1 out of 3 children not being in school. And one of the significant factors that came up was inadequate teaching and learning resources. It was therefore not a surprise to us that we were asked to look at the issue of inadequate teaching and learning resource because it is one of the big challenges hindering the continent from making great improvement as far as education is concerned. So we go in and we decided to dive in and to look at what causes inadequate teaching and learning resources. And for our team, we decided to analyze this problem statement from 2 levels or 2 perspectives. We decided to look at the first trench of the problem, which is from the state level. What is the state not doing? A reason for which we are not being able to have adequate teaching and resources within our school. We saw that the state is not providing enough resources, and even the very few schools or countries that are fortunate to have some kind of resources, the resources that they have tend to be outdated. And you realize that when it comes to issues of textbook, ICT equipment, and lab tools, they mostly fall on the shoulders of the state government, or if there is a federal government in case of countries that have a different approach to governance. So you can see that if you look over the continent, it is common to see schools under trees, just as we can see here. It's common to see schools without chairs and tables where students have to sit on the floor. It's common to see a situation where we have schools where teachers are doing their best to give students the required knowledge, but they do not have computers, they do not have mouse. So the teachers might have to try and improvise by using stones. And this is probably the story we have in a number of areas within the continent, because our major challenge is that we do not have adequate resources. Even where we have some resources, the resources tend to be out of date. So this was the challenge, the first challenge we established at the state level. Then we went in to look at the second challenge. We looked at it from the teacher level. What or how is the teacher also contributing to inadequate teaching and learning resources? The issue brought us to the point where we realized that there is non-availability of instructional materials. So it's not only infrastructure that is not there, but also instructional materials are non-available. So teachers need wall hangings. Teachers would like to have posters. Teachers would like to be able to take their students on field trips so that they can have real life experience. But often than not, these things are all not available. So then as a team, we decided to sit down and to brainstorm and to find out ways in which we can find solutions to this. So our first attempt was to find a solution to problem number 1, which is the inadequate and outdated textbooks, ICT tools, and then labs. But interestingly, this has to do with government. So we thought that the best way to get this is to get the government to make provision. So government provision would be the best approach to this. And when we get the government provision for this teaching and learning resources, then it requires that the schools and the districts and Ministry of Education do put in the necessary structures needed to ensure the maintenance of these resources. So we move to the second problem. How do we get to the second problem and how do we get to solve the second problem? The second problem had to do with inadequate teaching, the absence of teaching resources. And for us, we think that to a large extent, one way to address the issue of teaching resources is that we will need teachers to be creative and innovative, as well as to use local resources within our context. That is to say that teaching and learning resources should be contextualized. And we decided to search for researches on the use of local resources. And it was interesting to note that we found that the African Revival, in addition to many scholarly journals, had stated that when teachers embark on the use of teaching and learning resources within their local context, it to a large extent enhances students' understanding and development. It's interesting to note that given the financial challenges that behoves our continent, it is not going to be possible. And if we want to wait for a point where we can get westernized resources for all our teaching needs, then we, as teachers and as concerned members of the educational sector, might have to wait for a very long time, because it's impractical to say that government would have enough funds to buy all resources from Western countries, or even to get them on donor basis. For example, on your screen is a teaching and learning resource which is used in the early years for mathematics. Now, if we decide to want to import this into Africa, then I'm not sure the tons of imports that we need in order to be able to satisfy every school on the continent. But it's interesting to note that we have local resources which could be developed to satisfy this very same use of the resource. So for example, we can have this. We already know the counters. We can have our counters and get our students to use the counters to do the same thing that this imported or westernized resource could do. Secondly, we have the caps or crowns of different bottles, and plastic is not difficult to come by in Africa. Everything that we do, largely you would find that they are in bottles. And after we have done that, we throw these things away or we dispose them unsustainably. And one good use we can put them is to replace them with some of these products which we are looking up to our proprietors and the government buying from different parts of the world and bringing to Africa. Finally, we can see this fruit there, which is known as the African star fruit. In my local country, we call it alasan. I think Nigeria, where my colleagues do come from, I'm not too sure I've got it right, but it's Agbalini, not sure. But this is something very common in Africa. And myself, whilst I was in school, we did eat these fruits. And after we did eat this fruit, you get the seeds in there. And the seeds, we could pack them and stack them, and we could use them in counting. So you could have as many as 100, 800 of this, and we played with it and we counted it. And as we did that, we were basically learning our sums, we were basically learning our additions. And this could equally do what we have here, the first one. So I think that we will need teachers to think creatively. We will need them to find local solutions to help solve the resource need, the resource deficit that we have within our African continent. Because we as presenters do believe that we have equally good resources that if we decide to creatively harness, will help us as a continent to achieve the needed resources for our schools. And another example is the domino. If we are ever going to wait to get an imported domino from any part of the Western world, I think we would have to wait for a long time. But Africa is a land blessed with clay. We're blessed with good and different textures of clay. And we can put our creativity to bear by creating our own customized dominoes so that every school could have as many dominoes, and every child within the Ghanaian or within the African public system could have enough dominoes to enhance their arithmetic skills. And it is a pleasure to let you know that a lot of schools and non-governmental organizations have started using local resources to improve teaching and learning aids. So we can see from these images here where we have schools, teachers creatively thinking about how to use local resources which are abundant and are also cheap to improve their teaching and learning deficit. It's interesting to know that initially, it might be difficult trying to be creative in bringing up or putting up your own teaching and learning resource. But the good aspect of it is that once you are successful at it and you use it for this academic year or for this year group, it's still with you and you can use it in subsequent years where you will not need to go through the same challenge. So as far as inadequate teaching and learning resources concerned, as a group, we think the best solution is for teachers to think creatively and to use local resources in getting their teaching and learning needs. Secondly, we move on to talk about professional development, teacher attitudes, and why is it that we are not having diversity in training. It's interesting to note that as the code goes, in most schools, teachers are not consulted when it comes to professional development. They are just told that, okay, get ready, you'll be going for a PD. Whether the PD meets the direct needs of the teacher is nothing taken into consideration. All we know is and this is the case for the schools that are fortunate to have PD in their schools, because it is common to have teachers who have graduated for the past 10 years, 15 years, who have not had PD ever since they completed their teacher training education or whatever degree they took. But the fortunate ones to have PD, even the PD initiatives are done to them. They are not consulted. They are not asked, what PD do you think you need to improve your output or productivity in the classroom? So we look at teacher professional development. We had to do a lot of research, and then we came across the Research Observer, which has statistics to show that in 7 countries where research was conducted on 4th graders, it was seen that there was a very low knowledge in terms of a very low count in terms of teacher qualification. And it's surprising to know that in some countries, there was 0% of teachers who were qualified to teach 4th grade, yet they were in schools. So if they don't even have the basic teacher training qualification, then you can imagine how distant and far away PDs are to them. So we set to brainstorm, and then we came up with 4 points which do account for the reason why teachers have a lax attitude to professional development. The first one is, in most parts of Africa and in most schools, sadly to say, there's non-availability of continuous professional development. There is nothing like that. So teachers, they just probably finish their teaching certificate programs and then they teach for the next 20, 35 years of their lives without any professional development. You can imagine the kind of knowledge they are impacting to their children. Very, very outdated. Then there is lack of lifelong learning attitude. Some teachers also do not see the need to continually improve upon themselves. They only consider their students as the learners and not themselves as the learners. Then some PDs are unaffordable. It's interesting to note that the salaries of teachers are not anything to write home about. And if these teachers have to take some money out of their salaries to go for these PDs, it could be a huge financial burden on them. And lastly, we've seen that even in state systems or in districts where there are PDs implemented, most often than not, evaluation of the impact is non-existent. So it's just check box or just go for the PD and come and sit in the classroom. The impact of the PD, reflections of the PD are all non-available. Solutions. So we decided to look out for what needs to be done in order to ensure that there would be continuous PDs within the over the continent for teachers, and these PDs will be achieving their relevant impact. The first thing we decided to do is that there is the need to implement professional learning communities, and this is a topic that I researched into for my degree. And so I think I know a thing or two about professional learning communities. But this is where teachers come together, whether within a school or between schools, to establish a group where best practices can be shared and the teachers can challenge themselves professionally so that they can improve their pedagogy and their teaching strategies with the aim of maximizing the output of their learners. So what we think needs to be done is there should be professional learning communities, and this could be the responsibility of every teacher, every head of school, every district, and every nation on the African continent where teachers come together, probably just as we have come together, to share best practices and to make sure that we're having maximum impact on our students' learning. Secondly, is the issue of leveraging technology. In the 21st century, technology is advancing at a fast rate. And I do know that in some rural parts, access to technology might be challenging. But if you look at the continent on the whole, there are a number of the internet or the technology penetration is increasing over the years. And therefore, teachers can leverage on the technology and take online courses and programs just to improve themselves. You can have 1,000 of them on websites that we have listed below, but I think there are more websites than we have put down. Then thirdly, is the fact that there needs to be decentralization of continuous professional development from being organized only in the capital cities. Professional development should be decentralized. Every rural district should have a form of CPD where teachers within the districts can meet together, when teachers within the villages can meet together and share best practices and compete with each other in a healthy and a professional way. Finally, the government will need to come in and set research centers. Probably, I don't think this might be having to build a whole new infrastructure, but I think if governments could go into school districts, choose a particular school district and say, we are making school A the research center for ICT. All that they might need to do is to provide ICT learning materials. And teachers can move from all different schools within the district to come around, learn, share best practices. Another school could be designated a research center for probably social studies, research center for inclusion, a research center for mathematics, and teachers could all come together and share knowledge. Last but not the least, I think we would have to do with the need for government funding when it comes to CPDs. Some CPDs might require teachers to travel out of their districts. And until government puts up an allowance where it can support these teachers to travel, to get logistics for the PD, it's likely to be difficult and teachers are not going to be able to attend PDs. We've already talked about the fact that these PDs need to be relevant and targeted rather than generalized and asking teachers to go on a PD even within areas where they do not need or does not directly meet their teaching need. So this is what we decided to present by way of our topical areas that we were handed to. Thank you very much. Siyagobonga. Our references and then question time. But this quote I picked up, though it's not from an African, I think it's as relevant to our situation. If this quote is anything to go by, then I think that if we need to improve our continent as a whole, then we can't do that any faster than we do improve our educational system. It is therefore imperative that we pay key attention to our educational system if we ever have a dream of improving our collective continent known as Africa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. I love that quote. Thank you so much. As we said, please throw your questions in the oh, this is the last group, right? Lisa, is this our last group?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I think we have a few minutes. I think we should do questions for about maybe 5 minutes. And then I would like us to do breakout rooms to discuss these 3 presentations and then come back before we get our keynote speaker. Lisa, do you see any questions in there and would you like to read them out?
Absolutely. So we'll do the first question from, oops, sorry, technical issue here.
Can you end, Mark, will you please stop share so we can see your faces? Thank you.
Okay, so the question for the group who just went was put in by Mr. Michael Mumbo. The question is, some countries like Ghana, maybe Kenya following suit, are having professional development where they renew their contract based on performance. How is your country handling this? So I think the question is for the group who just presented, if you have some thoughts on contract renewal based on teacher performance. Do you have some points to put in about that?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, I didn't get the question pretty well, but I think at this point, I would want to invite my other two colleagues so that we can all address questions that are for us. So please, if the question could come once more, I would be grateful.
Sure, I'm going to present the question as well as read it. Some countries like Ghana, and maybe Kenya is following suit, are having professional development where they renew their contract based on performance. How is your country handling this?
Oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm not going to say that I have a countrywide knowledge of what goes on in Ghana, and I should be frank in saying that I have knowledge and experience dominantly within the international schools industry. So to a large extent, I don't know a lot about what goes on within the private, within the public state schools. So that's where the expertise of my colleagues who are from the public state schools did come in to complement my weakness. So I can speak to what goes on within the international schools within the Ghanaian education system. So within the international schools, a lot of contract renewals is based on teacher performance. So there is performance management within the number of schools, mostly largely Cambridge and IB schools within the country. And teacher contracts are renewed, I think usually 2 years. And this depends to a large extent on the performance of the teacher, which is part of the school's structured way of assessing teachers. So there are a whole lot of activities that goes into this performance review process, from teacher lesson observations to teacher teaching notes to the performance of students on standardized tests, and particularly when it has to do with external tests. So all these are factors that are taken into consideration by management before approving teacher contracts for the next teaching year, whenever their contract does end. So that's what I can say largely from the international schools sector within the country. Thank you. I don't know if my colleagues will want to come in.
Okay, good afternoon once again. I'm Bisala from Nigeria. Well, on this aspect, when it comes to professional development as a civil servant, basically in Nigeria here, teachers, we have more teachers in the public sectors, which are fully employed by the government on a permanent contract. So on such grounds, the professional development which is being given to teachers are being offered by some professional institutions in Nigeria. We have so many of them in Nigeria. And to assess their knowledge on the new knowledge acquired, there are being tests on a yearly basis, which leads to promotion of the teachers from maybe grade level to the next grade level, and also rewards to the teachers. Thank you.
If I could add something that I have noticed within the Ghanaian public state, recent times, the Ministry of Education in Ghana has introduced teacher licensure exams that teachers would have to sit an external exams to be licensed to teach for a number of years. And after maybe about 5 years, it expires and you have to go again. But I don't have the very fine details of the facts on that issue. So I know there is equally a licensure exams in Ghana for state teachers. Thank you.
Lisa, will we, where is my sound?
Shall I go to the second question?
Yes, please. Will you do the second question?
Sure, this is for the group who presented about mental health. The question is, mental health translated in Kiswahili is akili punguani. It is in itself a discriminatory word. Do you feel that there is local reference to mental illness can also be a hindrance to creating awareness? I'll also present that. I know I don't pronounce them correctly.
Cindy,
Yeah.
are you here? Marcus?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First, I want to agree with the questioner with regards to mental health or mental illness being a hindrance to creating awareness, because the even the local language, in the local language, the way it's expressed, particularly for Ghana and in almost all the 3 local languages I speak in Ghana, it's very discriminatory, and then a word that is looked down upon, for which reason you wouldn't even necessarily want to be tagged with it, even for the so-called insane people, for such a word to be used for you. One that can spark conflict. It's one that can spark anger just by mere identification with such a label. So that in itself, we don't want to talk about it. We wouldn't want to discuss it publicly to even create awareness about it. Recently, a lot of work has been done in promoting awareness on mental illness in Ghana. But there again, the way it is done in a very elitist manner, that we are trying to relabel or give a name that will be accepted by the society before we want to even treat the disease. If we are declared as person being mad, you're off the hook. Like you won't be attended to. You only need to be described in a very fine way. Oh, he's suffering from depression. He's suffering from a loss of a family member. He's suffering from the loss of a loved one. Then we pay attention to you. But if the word madness, as it is called, mental health issues are actually addressing in Ghana, if they said you are mad, it's like you are written off. Nobody wants to pay attention to you. Nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody wants to hear your story. Okay, so that in itself is a hindrance to awareness. So what communities, individuals have done is to not use those terminologies to describe the health conditions as the person has gone mad, but rather say, oh, this person is suffering from depression. This person is suffering from bipolar disorder. This person is suffering from a loss of a husband, a loved one, or a family member, or has suffered a tragic incident for which he is acting withdrawn. But the moment the word madness or mental issues, then you are just disregarded. So that in itself, to a large extent, causes awareness issues to the treatment and then support for people with mental illness.
I wanted to add, I think it's also important to note that these aren't mental illness has a stigma also in the United States as well, very similar to one in Ghana. As an educator, oftentimes although here now they've started to categorize mental illness by the different disorders, even still you have parents who are not willing to get their children the necessary help and use the resources that are already available to them because of the stigma surrounding mental health or mental illness that has transcended here in America for years, and specifically amongst Black culture in general. There's an umbrella that mental illness sits under, and despite all the information that we have here in the United States, that culturally it's still, like Miracle said, it's still something that is that's going to take some work and destigmatizing globally. So I just wanted to bring that connection, that it's not just in Ghana, but it's also something that you hear in the Black community in the United States predominantly, also very prevalent around there.
Wow,
Okay, thank you. The last question that we have, again, I'll put on the screen. This is for the beginning group on digital access. The question that actually I posed, how do your schools acquire resources such as the Lego robot kits or the fold scopes? Does public funding or tuition and fees cover these types of resources, or do you have to look to outside partners to get these types of learning tools?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. I think that question was addressed to our team, the team that was looking at the digital device. Yes, it's true that some of the resources that were shared, like when you look at Lego robot, single kid, probably a student in the rural region, in Western region of Kenya, probably in a public school, probably might not have access to it. But the question is, do we cut them off because they don't have access to this? At EduTab Africa, we say no. So how do we do this? Through partnership with the local community resource centers and local innovation hubs around the Western region of Kenya. We seek both local and international partners to support. For example, in the acquisition, then EduTab Africa, we facilitate in the transmission, or we facilitate the sharing of knowledge around how do we use robots, or how do we introduce kids to the concept of robotics and programming. So yes, these students might not have access to these resources, but within the communities, we have avenues, we have ways in which we can bring this technology to the learners. And that is why when you talk of community resource centers, when you talk of the different hubs within these communities, through linkages and leverages in the local partners and international partners, yes, we ensure that we can give the student access to this, whereby student doesn't have to pay, but because of the partnership we are having with these centers, we give them opportunity to experience this digital technology. Unless maybe there is something my colleague Patrick want to share.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It's just for me, it's just an emphasis on the gaps when you think about digital divide, and I would say it's still a big issue when you think about it in Africa, because there are numerous challenges that are being faced, and there's a resource that has been shared on the charts by Zach Basu that highlights some of the challenges that have been experienced, especially in the access of these STEM resources, because if you think about the inadequate funding for it, so this means that children in the rural areas cannot be able to afford this. But then apart from that, when you also think about some of the non-tech issues we presented, there are also ways that the same concepts in STEM can also be introduced to learners who do not have access to these materials. And I think it now goes back to that presentation, which was talking about the creativity of teachers, and also different professional development courses that teachers can also be exposed to some of the creative ways of introducing some of these concepts in learning. So apart from seeking for opportunities to fund these types of courses, there could also be ways of introducing similar concepts in STEM education through training teachers on creative ways of teaching the similar concepts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Naikiki, I think it will be nice to do some breakout rooms so people can talk amongst each other. Naikiki, are you up for that?
Yes, so I'm going to open up the rooms, and if people want to choose the room they'd like to go into to do a deeper dive into these topics. The rooms are open. You can select them based upon your choice. I see a couple of folks still not joined. If you need help, let me know and I can assign the room.
Hello, can you put me in the mental health room? Oh, I got
Sure.
it. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, are we missing something? I can't see any room to join. Were they being assigned randomly or something?
If you look at the big groups that are there, on the big groups, you say join. You could just join you could just click on join and join any of those groups. But if not, if you just tell me your group, I will just click on it and send you into that room.
You can just assign me any. I think I can't see any pop-up to join.
So just put you in any.
I think he was the person doing the digital access, so maybe you can go into that group and to discuss more.
Okay, he can't see the pop-up. That's what the issue.
Yeah, I can't see any pop-up to join any room.
Okay, one second.
Michael, is that you?
Oh, okay. I was expecting something like this.
Just put him into digital access.
Right. Do any of you see it? I don't know how they trouble too.
They're joining slowly.
Right. It's a system. It takes a minute. Well, it really does take a minute. Are we in a room? It looks like we are one room.
Yeah, we're still in the main room. I think there's.
Does anyone else want to get assigned who's still in the main room? I can help assign you.
It's Maribel, Chioma, and Dr. Tai. Oh, now there she goes. It must just be really slow.
So maybe Mirabelle is maybe listening in out and about.
Oh, and Chioma?
Probably the same thing. I forgot to say somebody should record, but it's fine. Let me post recording for us.
I'm going to assign those two just to a random room.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the hard part is coming, is leaving the breakout room. It's the conversation are always so good that you just want to stay there, and then you realize you have more good stuff coming up. So you have to leave. I hope in the future we can do it 3 hours so we can have 1 hour just to break out. Now to our main speaker of the day. And many of you might know Dr. Achen. She is one of the people that I can remember has been to these forums consistently. I think she's missed maybe one, if I'm not mistaken. If I didn't notice that you've missed one, and there was a very good reason why she missed it. I'm so excited. Mary is on my committee, and I couldn't be more blessed and more grateful. I have an amazing committee for my dissertation. I'm tearing up. I can't say enough good things about the people on my team. And above everything, I am so thankful to Mary today for taking time out of her extremely busy schedule. She was in workshops, and she has more stuff next week coming up, and she still made time to prepare this presentation for us. So Dr. Maria Cheng, is the Director of Research and Graduate Training at Strathmore Institute of Mathematical Sciences. She earned her Master's of Arts in Mathematics Education and her PhD in Mathematics Education at the Western Michigan University in 2018. Her dissertation is titled the Beringer's sequence, investigating what and how pre-service mathematics teachers learn through pedagogies of enactment. Besides teaching mathematics courses, she coordinates research and conference activities and professional development for mathematics teachers. She is a trustee in Mathematics Education to Empower Africa, an affiliate with the International Group for the Psychology of Mathematics Education. She was awarded the Western Michigan University Department of Mathematics Charles H. Butler Excellence of Teaching Award in 2017. Dr. Aicheng, thank you so much for making this time to speak with us and share your wisdom. It's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. And because of time, I'll just dive into this. This presentation is actually motivated by some work that we're doing jointly with Professor Penina Kamina from the State University of New York, Oneonta. And so in the background, some of the things that I'll be sharing are based on work that we've been doing with her, that we started doing with her from last year, May. And so, yeah, responsiveness of curricula, and we're looking at Africa. And according to Mamadou 2010, Africa is simultaneously going through 3 ages, the pre-industrial age, the industrial age, and the post-industrial age. And really, where we would want to be in terms of development is really in that third place, the post-industrial age, where there's a shift from products to ideas and knowledge, and where services are more important than really actual manufacturing of goods. And so we would want to all get to that third place, the post-industrial economy, but we are right now in all these 3 stages. It's interesting that even within one country, you'll find that different regions within a country could all be in these 3 different ages all at the same time. And so, yeah, I came across this question in one of the articles that I was reading, and I thought, wow, how can Africa run while others walk, while avoiding causing the same damage others caused when they were running? And so even as we seek to be in the post-industrial age, we need to be careful. So how are we going to do it without causing some of the things that we're dealing with right now, climate change and all the things, in relation to the environment, and of course, even things like a lot of strife. How do we get there without jeopardizing some of the things that we already have? And so where do we start? And some of the things that I'm going to mention here, we are already doing, but we could do better. And I know in the presentation on professional development, some of these things did come up. Prioritize education. And a lot of African countries, spend quite a significant amount on education, but we could do a little better, just spend a little bit more, prioritize education. But beyond prioritizing education, the quality, we need to ensure that the quality of education addresses the mismatch of skills. And teaching in a tertiary institution, we are constantly bombarded by people from the industry. You're giving us people who are just not prepared. They don't have the skills that we're looking for. And so improving the quality of education, not, right from the early ages through high school and even at the tertiary level. And then, of course, an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And again, that is being addressed, but are we doing enough? And if we are going to make the transition, the shift from products to ideas and knowledge, because someday, the resources will run out, the gold, the copper, all these resources someday. And already, sometimes even just due to the effects of climate change and things like poaching, countries that depend, like Kenya, that depend a lot on tourism, some of our tourist attractions, we're having issues with, maintaining, the populations of animals in those parks. And so what are we going to do to make the transition from a resource-based economy to a knowledge-based economy? And there's a lot of talk about 21st century skills and a lot of articles and research. I mean, there's a lot of information out there on 21st century skills, these skills that will help us to get to where we want to be. And we need to be deliberate about integrating the development of these skills in teaching in all subjects in school. And a number of countries have actually been very deliberate in doing this by adopting the competency-based curriculum as a way of, ensuring that we are deliberately incorporating the development of these skills in our learners from a very early age. And what are these competencies? And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a list that I got from some of the curricula that we looked at across the different countries that have adopted the competency-based curriculum. And I'm not here to really say that the competency-based curriculum is the way to go. I'm just giving it as an example, as one of the ways that some African countries are looking for ways of being deliberate in terms of building skills towards building up knowledge and skills that would support these countries in being able to make the transition from depending on resources to working with ideas and knowledge. And so there could be other countries that may not have, implemented the competency-based curriculum, but within their curricula, they are integrating the development of some of these skills and competencies that I've put here on this slide. And so even as we aspire to develop these competencies in our learners, and looking at some of the countries that have implemented the competency-based curricula, I just want to first of all, just highlight what are some positive things that are coming out of this. And then later on, I'll talk about the gaps. And so I'm starting off with some positive things. And some of these positive things that I'll be talking about are things that we observed with Professor Kamina that we're collaborating with, as we observed mathematics classrooms where the competency-based curricula was being implemented. One of the things that we observed was a paradigm shift. And we'd had the conversation as we looked at the curriculum, we're like, wow, this curriculum, it would take a paradigm shift. We cannot go on teaching the way we were teaching. And we did observe, one thing that we observed was, the traditional setup where the communication was, the teacher speaking, often the children were silent, and the children only spoke when they were asked to speak. That transition, that kind of communication where it was the teacher to the students, and it was always one way. When the students were speaking, they were responding to the teacher. We noticed a change, and there was more student talk. And that is something that even before we thought about the competency-based curriculum, as educators, that is something that one desires, a classroom where children are talking to each other. They have an opportunity to share their ideas. And for me, that was, it's a paradigm shift just to get into classrooms and see that happening. I still remember when I was teaching, my head teacher commenting that your classes are too noisy, because noise was not a good thing. Of course, I'm not talking about, the chaotic noise where children are just making noise, but at that time, I had already experienced this paradigm shift that I'm talking about because of some training that I'd gone through. And I was giving my children an opportunity to talk among themselves, but it was seen as noise. Your classes are too noisy. And it really gave me a lot of joy to walk into these classrooms and to find that noisy classrooms, it is now okay for a class to be noisy because the children are talking to each other. And in addition to the paradigm shift, allow me just to mention some of the things that we were able to observe that I think the team that was talking about professional development did mention, teachers improvising. We observed teachers using, I remember going to a class where they were talking about place value, and, the students came with their own abacus that they had made, and the abacus, they had a piece of wood and they had a nail, and something that they made by themselves, and they came with it from home, and they were using bottle tops. And I went to another class where a teacher was teaching a grade 2 class, where a teacher was teaching about the concept of mass. And they start off first with just being taught about, comparing heavier, lighter. And these children had come from home with beam balances that they had made with the help of their parents, just pieces of wood, bottles that had been cut, tied with strings. And they were comparing things that were easily available, soil, they had flour. They were comparing things that were easily available in their context. And so for me, that's a paradigm shift, so that we are not always thinking about, what we don't have, but rather we're immediately looking in our immediate environment, what is available that can support learning of some of the concepts that we're trying to help our learners to master. And then another positive highlight is just the involvement of family and community in the children's learning. And this is something that we have observed as we have read through the different curricula for the different countries that we were looking at, that there was a deliberate attempt at involving family and community in the children's learning. In Kenya, this has caused kind of a bit of an uproar, because parents are feeling all of a sudden, children are coming home with things that they need their parents to help them with. And some people have complained, or some of the assignments are unrealistic. And of course, maybe that's an area that maybe we need to address, with the teachers. But like the beam balance that I observed in that class, it wasn't anything, some people have felt like, what if you don't have resources? But from the classes that we observed, and we were observing classes in public schools, where a lot of the children who go to those kind of schools come from backgrounds where the parents have limited resources. A lot of what I saw were things that were readily available in the immediate environment. The beam balance was just 2 pieces of wood, and they did not even need to look, sandpapered nicely. No, just 2 pieces of wood, a nail, bottles cut in half, hung with strings, and that was it. There was a beam balance that allowed children to compare, heavier, lighter, by simply placing things on both sides of the beam balance. And then the second point here that is related to the involvement of family and community is that a lot of these curricula are being very deliberate about relating the child's social context, relating learning to the child's social context. And I liked particularly the Cameroon curriculum that applies 3 pedagogies: project-based learning, cooperative learning, but particularly the third one, integrated learning themes. And in the integrated learning themes, the learning themes are, home, village, town, nature, universe, and space. And they use these integrated learning themes to support learners in the development of the skills, so that learners, the skills that are needed for them to have a harmonious integration in their environments. So we are seeing a situation where learning is no longer this isolated thing that learners do in school, but rather there is that integration and connections to the learner's environment. I'm not saying it is perfect. But I'm saying this is something to celebrate, at least something. We are moving in the right direction. And especially this second point here, if we're thinking about the question that I posed, how can Africa run without causing the same damage run while others walk, without causing the same damage that others caused when they were getting to where we want to be right now. And so for me, I think just these, particularly this integration of considering the child's context, involvement of family and community, and also just a value. A lot of the competencies for most countries have values like citizenship, like the Kenyan curriculum, citizenship. And under citizenship, they talk about, being bringing up learners who will be ethical citizens, people who will be stewards of the earth. And so having that right balance between development, but at the same time, tapping into our local resources, but taking care of our environment. And then I'll just get into the gaps. What are some of the gaps? And as I've said, even what I'm celebrating as the highlights are not perfect. We could do a whole lot better. Now, what we noticed as we looked at some of these curricula was that some of them were not unpacked in a way that would make it easy for a teacher to know what they should do in the classroom. And I think one of the things that we experienced, especially as we were observing, like problem solving. Problem solving is a very important competency. And we realized in some of the classrooms that we observed that the teacher's concept of problem solving and what problem solving is were very different. Some of the teachers thought that problem solving was simply students being able to do the questions in the text. And because we often call those questions in the text, we call them problems. And so some of the teachers thought that because the students are able to do those questions, then the students are problem solving. And so those are some of the places where there are gaps, unpacking what those competencies should look like. One thing that we really appreciated, we noticed the Ghanaian curriculum has a very good teacher resource pack that, unpacks, clearly explains some of these. And then the second point here, which I think the team that was talking about professional development did touch on, continuous professional development. A lot of professional development has been, inadequate and short, brief one-off events, especially at the start, and then after that, often there isn't much else. And so that again is a gap in terms of support for teachers in implementing some of these curricula. And then of course, mathematics instruction, the way mathematics is taught, and the content of curricula. We realize that apart from adding the competencies so that these competencies can be integrated in teaching, a lot of the curricula remained, in terms of content, remained very traditional, and they don't have any new topics, new areas. And I'm thinking of an area like graph theory that is very accessible and is something that would greatly, greatly support the kind of thinking that we need for problem solving, the kind of thinking that we need for information technology, because it also forms a basis. Some of the topics that fall under discrete mathematics, and discrete mathematics is one of those topics, is one of those areas of mathematics that gives a foundation, it's a foundation for information technology. And so I think these are some of the things that maybe people need to rethink. People who are doing curricula, we need to incorporate some of these topics that would help us move in the direction that we want to go, especially in terms of information technology. And then of course, limited resources, and especially when it comes to digital literacy. Thank you so much, the EduTab team, for what you're doing and for what other teams like you out there are doing in terms of equipping learners. And I know some of the work that you're doing even with teachers, equipping teachers in terms of digital literacy, because that is one of the things that we noted as we went to the classrooms, because we were doing interviews with the teachers after the class. We would ask them, what competencies were you aiming for in this class? And then they would tell us the competencies they were aiming for. And then we would ask them, how did you intend to support the development of that competency that you were aiming for? And one competency that was often missing was digital literacy. And often it was because the teachers did not have the resources, or sometimes when they did have the resources, like, I appreciate, the government has done a lot in giving tablets to schools. But we realized, like in one school, the teacher told us, oh, the tablets are in some room and it's a lot of work going to get them. And then you need someone to set them up and bringing them to the classroom. And then we also saw a class where, yes, the tablets were brought in, but then how they were used, you would want to use digital tools in a way that supports the learning of the content that you are teaching. And so they were used more like for games and more maybe for mastery. We've learned how to add 3-digit numbers. And so, okay, let's add 3-digit numbers. But then in my mind as an educator, I'm thinking that the digital tools should be used to support an understanding of what it means to add. And so again, that is an area where I think there is a gap. And I don't want to go on and on about limited resources, but there are a lot of challenges, large classrooms. I think I remember going to one school where a classroom that is supposed to hold about 40 children had about 170 children. And this was, it had about 170 children. But one thing that I appreciate, our teachers are doing their best. In the midst of that, I observed a teacher marking literally mid-air. She had this small space that she could walk, and she would walk in that small space, and the students would pass their books, and she would be marking literally mid-air. And of course, she would put them in groups just to help, facilitate learning. And I could see that the teachers were really, really trying the best. Again, going back to what I said earlier, there is a paradigm shift. It may not be perfect, but I feel like because of the implementation of this curriculum, being deliberate about supporting learners to develop these competencies, teachers have been put in this situation where they really don't have a choice but to change their direction in terms of how they see interactions in the classroom. And I will stop there. Thank you so much. I just want to pose 2 questions for us to think about even as we leave. And whether or not your school local contest has a competency-based curricula or not, what does the development of the 21st century skills look like in your schools? And another question that I'd like to pose is, what can be done to better support the development of these skills in your local context? And I'd like to stop there because of time. Thank you so much. Thank you. And these are just some of the references that I used as I prepared this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chang. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry we did not have a lot of time left. And thank you everybody for sticking with us, even though we're past time, but thank you so much for sticking with us. Are there any pressing questions for Dr. Chang? All right, no questions? I don't see
I'd like to ask Dr. Eichen, this is Ty Houston, her thoughts about the flipped classroom where actually students are empowered not only to talk to each other, but to lead the discussion around curricula. And I know she highlighted project-based learning and of course, competency-based curriculum, problem-based learning, but the notion of students having to prepare to co-teach, if you will, with the teacher and or professor, and how empowering that can be in terms of a shift and a level of commitment from the student to be performing at their best. So the comfortability of being uncomfortable, if you will, as Dr. Hamilton has taught us, just putting them on the spot so that they're accustomed to performing, which means they'll be more attuned to the lesson. I just wanted to get the doctor's comments on those thoughts.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that those are some of the areas where I think our teachers would need support on how they can implement that in their classrooms. And of course, what that means, again, going back to a paradigm shift, is that the teacher is not seeing themselves as the source of all knowledge. And that I already saw happening. You know, I went to this one class where, you know, the teacher actually had made that shift of not seeing themselves as the source of all knowledge. So again, yes, I agree that is one of the areas where maybe as we think about PD, we need to support teachers to be able to do that. Yeah, I agree, definitely. Definitely. That would go a long way, especially when one of the skills is self-efficacy.
Yes.
And that would go a long way in building self-efficacy and communication for the students. Yes.
Yes, Bandura teaches us that. In fact,
Yes.
the self-agency.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so they
Thank
come
you.
to school ready and a little excited, but they may be a little uncomfortable because they're attuned to being put on the spot.
Exactly.
Which keeps them engaged. Thank you, Doctor, for your insights.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Mm-hmm. I can see Miracle. Daniel has a hand up.
Yes. First, thanks for the presentation. I was maybe overly joyed to actually see Ghana mentioned, because I actually led the feasibility study for the change of the curriculum in Ghana. And then for 2 years, yeah, before I handed over to government, and then I was very key in the structure of how it should be implemented. Unfortunately, the implementation is not going as the way we had planned and intended it, as in Ghana. Also largely because in as much as we involve teachers in the design, the preparation of the curriculum, had their insight and then brought them together to, share experience, what is currently working in the school system, what we need to keep up, and then what we need to change in terms of the curriculum. When it got to implementation, the cost of implementation and then having to do it at a national scale kind of interfered with how the fidelity we had during the feasibility studies, to the point that a lot of the teachers do not even understand the competency-based curriculum in terms of the shift from focusing largely on competencies, developing competencies, to just learning content. And there's still that struggle for a lot of the teachers in teaching a student to develop the competencies rather than just learning content for content's sake situation. And I think I've been working with colleagues from Tanzania, Uganda as well recently, and they still have the same challenge with regards to development of skills, and everybody still thinks in the objective mode of get the children to learn what 1 + 1 is, and how to communicate what 1 + 1 is and what it means to do 1 + 1 is still a huge gap among our the teaching folks. And hopefully through forums of this nature, we would definitely get to have more voice to send a message across about the the level of competency we need to be developed, both at the teacher level and then at the student level, and then largely also at the teacher educator level. It's one of the things I'm actually investigating now, because it seems those of us training the new crop of teachers were not educated in an era where these things were key. So we still imparting all that we learned at the time to our new teachers, and the fears we had. I mean, from my math background, the fears we had about mathematics are the same fears we are transferring to this new crop of teachers, and then they are carrying these same fears to our new crop of students who we have in the system.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, you bring up a very important point. And even in Kenya, even though we were observing these things that have highlighted as positive highlights, the implementation, we have challenges with the implementation, and teachers really not understanding what some of those competencies should look like. And really the purpose of the study that we're doing with Professor Kamina is so that we can come up with a professional development tool. We're actually thinking of coming up with after we analyze this data, we want to come up with a professional development tool based on lesson study, because lesson study gives more ownership to the teachers, so that we can then apply lesson study as a way of supporting teachers to understand these competencies. So that is part of the work that we hope to do later this year or next year. Yes, yeah. But thank you for that comment. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, we're really over time, and I know people are. Any other questions or comments?
All right.
Maybe, yes.
Go ahead, Mary.
No, I'm just saying, let me just put my email address in the chat, just in case somebody has any follow-up questions because of time. Because this is an ongoing study. We've just started, so yeah. we hope we can come up with something that a professional development tool that will be able to be used, by other countries also. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cheng. This was very informative, and thank you again, everybody, for being patient and sticking with it. We will try to wrap up and make sure that maybe we're going to survey to see if we need to extend the forums.
Yeah, but
so that we all come in ready. Yeah. So moving forward, our website is up and running, africaleads.net. If you go there, you find more information, all the information. We're trying to put up all the videos on there. So we'll keep uploading these videos on there. That way you don't have to go to Google to try and find stuff. We continue to look for partnership opportunities to invite more people to the forum, share more knowledge with educators, and explore any other partnership opportunities that might help educators move into the future. So we want to also increase engagement. We have about 300 people in the database. So if you have ideas on how to increase engagement for these people or the other people that are not able to make it, please let us know. We will be connecting again in May, and that will be our 2-year mark. The forums has been going on now for 2 years. That May will be the 2-year mark. And we're hoping that we can have a really nice big event at that time. If possible, email us your ideas for our 2-year mark so we can do something fun and exciting. I will be in Kenya. For those of you that are in Kenya, I will be in Kenya conducting research on next week, Monday. I leave Monday. So in 2 days, I'm very excited. I'll be in Kenya, in Kisii in particular. I had Lisa and Naikiki helping out. Thank you so much, Lisa and Naikiki. I could not have done it without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The next forum, I probably need more hands. So don't give up on me yet. I'll call you up again. So thank you again, everybody, for coming.